thought this might be useful. So we'll be focusing on the integration section for the CT review board. As you know, I failed that section in December, and I was last month. So since I did a kind of a deep study, so hopefully you can learn some things. So this is a study guide from the study guide for the integration section. As you can see, there are a few things that they are looking for when you cover the integrations. You have to make sure you cover the integration patterns, the technology that they'll be using, and also, as you can see, sometimes you need to cover the risks and the trade-offs based on what you pick, and also you have to think about the overall integration architecture. So I highly recommend you kind of review this section, and then you should have a kind of action plan during a presentation where to highlight or where to bring up these topics to get full points for this section. Next, as one of the main things that I in my failure notes that I got was, I didn't justify the ESP and ETL. I was always doing it in my mocks, but on the review board in December, I forgot to do that. So this time I wrote it on the system landscape, why ESP, why ETL. So these are the things that I know. If you look at the study guide and a lot of in the Salesforce documentation, there are different ways they bring up ESP, ETL. But then I picked my own kind of things that I want to highlight during the system landscape. So for ESP, I said I'm going to avoid the point-to-point integration. It's going to do the transformations of both the payload and the protocols. It's going to help the guaranteed delivery, and it's going to be taking care of the failover and error handling. And also, it's meant for the real-time integration, and also it can do orchestration between multiple systems, ESP. And ETL, I said I'll be using for the batch and high volume integrations. And it usually has a staging environment which can do all the deduping and other pre activities before the data is loaded, and it's meant for running long-running operations. It could be like days and hours for data load, but ETL is meant for that. So these are things that I highlighted. You can probably add and remove certain things in your presentation, but I want to make sure that you always bring up ESP here, because that's one of the comments I got in my first feedback. Next, on the integration patterns, if you saw, this patterns and technology. So on the patterns, I just picked up this from the one of the workshops that we had. Is from what Salesforce says, and it's the same things on the integration patterns document. So make sure you give the exact name when you're identify integration. Make sure you use the document. In the patterns documents, one of the things patterns that they don't talk about is the ones related to the UI mashups, the canvas. So when you have a canvas integration, you don't need to put this 6, but you can say it's a UI/canvas pattern. Next, so you should know all these things by heart. Yeah, there's one on, the other one is on the capabilities. This is also important that you highlight, integration pattern and the capabilities, whether it's a REST API, platform event, and so on. I'll show what I did in my review board, but you have to highlight these two because the study guide clearly says you have to say the pattern and the technology. So technology is, I think it's the same as capability. Maybe in your integration, you can use the same word. I use the capability, but I think technology means the same thing. So these two things are very important that you highlight in each and every integration. Sorry about that. Next, in the integration patterns and practice documents, you've seen it here. You should be reading this. I took a printout and I read this few times. It's very important, and every release Salesforce updates this, so you have to keep an eye on the changes. For each pattern, they have described what is the best one, so you have to make sure that you know exactly the best one. So when you propose something, make sure you pick something from the best type, because for example, there are something called best and some are suboptimal, but you have to make sure you pick the fit is best, right? So in request reply, you can pick this or this or this, but then these other ones should be the your last options. Ideally, you should not be picking the other ones in the review board. This should be something among the best topics. So make sure you know for each pattern what is the best type. Right? One of the key things I focused on this document is just make sure you keep an eye on this idempotent design, and also guaranteed message delivery. So there are two keywords, and there are different sections in this thing that you can just search for that word and make sure you read wherever those two topics are discussed. Idempotent design. So for this request reply, it talks about what does idempotent means for this pattern. So it means, for example, if you are invoking the same transaction multiple times, you should not harm you should not add additional integrations or transactions on top of it. So make sure you're very clear on this two concepts, idempotent and guaranteed delivery. Guaranteed also very important, because if you look at the ESP, I highlighted the keyword guaranteed delivery, but on the document itself, make sure you talk about the idempotent, guaranteed delivery. Just do the keyword and do your own reading. But I feel these two topics are very important. And also, one thing I did was, there are very good examples, and some of these examples could be in the review board exactly. So it tells you, for each pattern, like a example and how they solve the solution, right? So I took all these examples. I took a printout of examples, and I made so it was on my cheat sheets, another sheet, the flashcards. So I made one flashcard for each, and I was just browsing them in a while. It is very useful, these examples. Okay, and as you go through examples, you would realize most of the mock scenarios are they have this similar examples, because then when you read the real scenario, you could just remember the example, and you can kind of go with the solution which is recommended in this book. So it's very important to read the examples. I want to highlight two mistakes that they in the book they have. One is on the external services. It talks about this Apex governance limits doesn't apply, but I think in the latest one they removed this, so they corrected this one. And also I think even Christopher found this one in one of the things they talk about platform events. It gives a authentication token as a session ID, but I think it's only in outbound messages on platform events. I don't think session ID is passed, so you can do a callback. So I think this is wrong as well, but this one definitely is wrong because they did a correction in this release. And I open a ticket for this one as well. But just do keep these two in mind. Next, I want to talk about the implicit integrations, which was very heavy on one of my scenarios that I got. I think that's one of the reasons I failed. So for the next attempt, I kind of came up with this list. So when you read scenario, how to identify the implicit integrations, which are not mentioned directly. One is, all objects. So once you do the data model, you'll have objects. Usually those are the nouns of the keyword, right? Like a customer or a location or whatever is mentioned. So once you have a data model, make sure there's a creator for that. So it will say created by the sales rep or a design consultant or whoever. But it's possible once you do the data model, you might find some objects which are not doesn't have a creator. So for example, the products or the price books. So either you can assume it's created by a person, which you can mention in the as you put you're going to put the owner on the data model. You can do that. But if not, if it's a lot of data, it's very possible in the scenario it talks about sales. They're using Salesforce for automation, and they want to avoid a lot of manual entries. So assuming a user creating lots of records might not be a valid assumption. So in that case, you could probably assume it's an integration. By the way, these are all only my own theories. It's not what Salesforce recommends, or you should not go with this list saying this is the list, only the list, but there could be other scenarios, but it's only my own opinion. Okay. So yeah, so if there's no integration, there's a possible integration. So you could assume that integration and talk about it. And also, if you once you do the system landscape, all systems need to have some kind of reference. For example, if it's a decommissioning system, there's usually a data load that you have to bring, initial data load. If it's a non-decommissioning system where the system is going to be maintained in the future, it could be either there could be a IDL and an integration, or just an integration, right? So if you have a in the system landscape after you draw, if there's a system which is just standing alone by itself, that might be a sign that tells you that there has to be integration, right? Because otherwise, there's very less chance that they might just talk about a system landscape. It's possible they might be just saying it's just overall system landscape, but just keep an eye if there's a box that you're drawn which is being referenced in your requirements, but there's no integration. So just keep an eye on these boxes. Other one is on the follow-up integrations. So for example, it might talk about a creation of a record, but then it's possible that you need to get updated records, right? That came through integration on the creation through integration. So this one is a probably implicit, right? Because it's usually you don't want to see the stale data, right? And also the other one is like if you do a payment, it's possible there could be a refund, right? So just think about the subsequent integrations that might come based on the scenario, right? So if you buy something, if they cancel it, then of course there's a refund, right? If you do a creation record and you don't see any updates coming back, but the uses of the data is updating, but it's never mentioned as an integration. So that means there could be an update as an integration. So these are three things that you should be checking. For example, this one, right? This second point you should do after you do the system landscape and after you do the scenario, just check this boxes in the system landscape. First one is after you the data model, and during validation you can check, okay, does everyone is that every owner for each and every object, right? This is one other way. And also on the integrations,
For our food. My sister.
sorry. Yeah, so on the integrations, make sure that what are the follow-up integrations. These are kind of my list of checkpoints that I came up with, but I think it's good to check these three areas that you're going to come across. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yep.
All right. So yeah, just these are some of the ways you can find the implicit integrations. Next, one of the complex integrations that I've came across in a demo. I think it's good to just know about this. It's nothing you should be designing or whatever, but just be mindful. So for example, usually when you do a integration through a backend ERP, right? Especially like if you are booking a ticket, or if you're booking, which is like a same item could be booked at the same time. For example, like a ticket, like a seat number on a ticket, or if you're buying something from like Amazon, right? So when you when you add to the shopping basket, right, they do a soft reservation. So like an integration that goes and do a soft reservation, so nobody else can buy it, right? And once you do the order, then you order that item. But if you are not if the basket is not completed, let's say within 15-20 minutes, you unreserve this item, right? So that maybe the unreserving could be done by the ERP itself, or the ESB sending another integration. But just be mindful of this use case, right? Because I mean, I've not seen in this in use case, but it's possible that you during the user from a user experience point of view, you should not be you should buy something, and at the time you enter the credit card, you should not be saying, okay, your item you booked is somebody has bought it, right? Ideally, when you add to the basket, you should be given some time to complete the transaction, right? So just be mindful of this soft integration that we usually don't think about in your integration, especially when you're buying through a shopping cart or even say the community where other people also can buy the same item, right? Especially as I said, in a game ticket or like uh, something, it could be based on I think it could be based on the industry, but just be mindful of this, right? And I saw this demo. It's work. It's a kind of you don't have to just say CPQ. It could be just Salesforce, but just be mindful of the integration, right? It's good if you think about this and when you talk about this, it shows the knowledge that you need to have this soft reservation in between. Next, I want to talk about some of the things I came across this in one of the last in my review boards is first one is usually we talk about Salesforce patterns, right? It could be it could support API calls, bash integrations, real time, synchronous, asynchronous, but it's possible that even the downstream system could have multiple APIs available, right? So same data could be given to you in a they could publish the data, you could do a call in, so it will be remote calling for them, or they could give a data in a batch format, right? So just think about which pattern to use in based on the scenario, right? So if you have multiple APIs, which one to use, right? Batch not might be is good if it's high volume, but if you want data at real time, batch not might be the right solution, right? So just think about those scenarios. Also, like if we look at Greenhouse Recycle, they have two ERPs, right? Multiple ERPs. There's one for medical waste and one for industrial. What if you have one order with both, right? So there's a orchestration involved where you have to split the order, and then what happens if one item one of the industrial item is not available? How we're going to handle that integration? So just think about this solution bit in depth, right? Next one, error handling. I'm going to talk about in the next slide. And also the other one is during acquisitions, how it's going to impact the integrations. In the acquisition, you might merge Salesforce, but the downstream systems might be there as is, right? It's like this example, right? You have industrial and the medical systems kept as is, but in Salesforce is one Salesforce, but two ERPs, right? So this could happen, especially when you do mergers. So make sure you are aware of the impacts. Next, about the error handling. So there's a nice video from Mitesh. Just make sure you watch this. I did post a link on Slack, but just make sure you watch it. But make sure, for example, on a request reply, right? So the failure could be on the ESP, could be down, target system could be down, right? Like on fire and forget also, failure could be happening in different places, right? So you have to make sure you have a right how we're going to handle the errors, right? For example, fire and forget, ESP could do the retries, right? Yeah, so actually, yeah. So if target fire, if using fire and forget, sorry, fire and forget platform event, if ESP is down, they could do a kind of replay and get the message back to ESP, right? But then if the target system is down, ESP could do a retry. Right? Retry could be, for example, it tries every 5 seconds. But if they want to try every, say, maybe after 10 minutes, they might have a queuing mechanism. ESP could put on a message in queue, and that could have another retry mechanism on the target, right? And but we had to. The main important thing is when you're retrying this mechanism, you have to inform the user, right? For example, users should not be saying, okay, this is taking so much time, and they're going to try to click multiple times, right? user should be informed very graciously, like either updating status or putting a chatter post. A user should be informed very nicely. On a request reply, since the user is waiting, you could always give the error message back, so the user can decide what to do, either retry or do a manual operation or whatever is a business process. But it's very important that in their handling, you talk about user experience overall into it, right? If say in fire and forget, it's very possible the user does something and then they do a lot of other activities, right? He might not check that order for a while, right? So if there's a failure, for example, if order is going to be sent asynchronously, you might update the order status, but user will never know because user is running some other reports or is doing something else on the chatter on Salesforce. So you have to inform the user very graciously, right? As I said, a chatter post. So chatter post could be subscribed in different ways. So make sure you think about the overall how the user, just not the technical part of it, but from a user point of view, how the user are going to be informed when there's a failures, right? Also, I think Chris also, when you talked about it, especially when you do fire and forget, there's a very slight chance that the platform event might not be created in Salesforce. It's a very slight chance. So in that case, you have to do a kind of a reconciliation between messages received by ESP and what's in Salesforce if there's a discrepancy, right? For example, it could be you have say 100,000 orders created in Salesforce, but the platform is created and is being processed could be 999, right? So if there's one missing, one extra in Salesforce, the order, you could just come back and do the reconciliation and figure out how that should happen. It's a very rare situation, but know that overall there could be failures at each and every point, and what's your solution strategy, right?
So, Waruna, can I ask a question or do a remark here, or do you want to wait for the end of your presentation?
Yeah, no, you can ask us if you want. You can ask now.
Yeah, reconciliation, very interesting. At one point, if you have a failure, you could always log the event you send from Salesforce in a table and then do some reconciliation at night, something like this. When you look in the documentation, you also have two concepts that exist, where you can have a UUID and you can also have an event in platform event to which you can subscribe, and it will tell you if events were published correctly. And I think when you look at the documentation, it says that one of the features is a beta feature, because some of the publication is made asynchronously. And when the publication is made asynchronously, the famous event I just talked about before, it will not give the confirmation. So it means that this mechanism, for now, is not reliable enough, and that reconciliation is the only way. I don't know if anyone around the table knows what I'm referring to, the error. I forgot what's the name of the event, but I was wondering whatever we could build on top of that. But seeing that it's still beta, I think until it's GA, we cannot do anything with it.
Yep, correct. Yeah, even as I said, it has to be just maybe these I think beta products you can't. But I think in the review you can say it's coming, but at least for now, it's another alternative. Yeah, so good point. Okay, all right. We talked about this. Yeah, so we talk about the error handling. Yeah, make sure you also talk about the user experience in error handling, right? Next.
Hey Waruna, one more question on this. So should we cover this as part of the presentation, or this is something for Q&A?
Yeah, so I think based on your timing, because here in the justification you already told you're going to do guaranteed delivery error handling. So I think maybe, for example, like, yeah. So maybe when you're, for example, when you're, if you're using platform events, you can just say, if platform event, most of the error handling from here onwards is based on the ESP. For example, like if you do outbound message, right? That retry is that burdens on Salesforce, but you're going to say, things I said was, since I'm using platform event because I want to make sure that ESP does a guaranteed delivery after it receives a message from end to end. So maybe you can talk about few things. But I had a question on error handling as a follow up. Maybe because I had an integration, what do you call integration attempt. But if you look at what the saying was, you have to you look at the overall integration architecture. So I have a feeling overall you have to talk about who is doing the bulk, at least the error handling. So you can say SP and give one or two examples if you have the time. I think it's a hard call to say because I don't think he'll have time to go each and every failure point and tell exactly. But also one thing I've seen in the past, like they're really keen on the user experience. What is the user experience? So you can say, for example, in a request reply, user is waiting for the reply, and I'll be using request reply in this pattern. Also, because of this, if there's error, I would definitely give that error message to the user so they can do a retry. So, request reply you can very easily say, because user is going to most likely do the retry. So I think maybe it's a very good opportunity for you to say how you're handling the error from user point of view.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Next, on outbound messages, as you know, some of the judges, they've taken the review board in some time ago, where outbound messages was very popular. So as you know, even now in the next release, it's already came, right? I saw a release note that even in the flow now they're going to support outbound messages, right? So I know that Salesforce is not investing on this feature, but at least you can still use it in the flow now in the next, I think this summer release onwards. So one thing interestingly is on if you look at the Joe Castro's on videos, there's one for the 2-minute grill on the integration, where he talk about outbound messages as one of the options. But the important thing here is, where they talk about, so you should watch that video, by the way. It's very interesting. You might even get him as a judge, right? So other thing is also, like he talks about is, when you're doing integration, especially asynchronous, you could have a queuable or a queuable, why to use queuable for especially for error handling when you have integration, right? So I did talk to somebody in Salesforce as well, who was very knowledgeable, and I talked to Chris as well. And there are 3 good reasons why Cubase is a comparative future, why Cubase is important for integrations, right? There might be other reasons also, but for integrations, because one is you're going to get the job ID, and you can do a retry. And it provides something called the transaction finalizers, right? So if you just Google, there's a nice document. So I was not aware of this, but just read that. I don't know if you'll get any questions, but it's a very good concept as for Qable. And then you can chain, which is also important, right? So you can do multiple calls. So just watch this video on his integration, and just be aware of this.
So Waruna, yeah, I think this 2-minute drill is pretty amazing, and I think it has to be watched. But me, I would recommend watching it once you are already, let's say, did your homework and worked a little and did a couple of mocks, so that you can put you in context. And this 2-minute drills is very nice. So I have a question on the queuable and add future. Let's say, quite often when we have integration in the scenarios, you will have the request and reply, like the synchronous request and reply, the one you do from the controller. This is usually what you do when you have a payment or when you send something to ERP and you have users waiting. Okay, this is what you do. You put maybe continuation, etc. That's perfect. Now, a use case for the add future or the queuable, because if you do queuable, actually it moves asynchronous. From Salesforce perspective, it is asynchronous, but from the remote system perspective, it doesn't have to be asynchronous somehow, because I mean, you see what I mean? It's like, as long as you keep within 120 seconds to response, you have made things asynchronous from Salesforce perspective, but let's say behind the scene, you are still waiting for the response. Honestly, I have not seen really some scenarios where I recommended that. Each time I had to do something like this, I would talk about a platform event, actually. So what do you think about this?
Yeah, so platform, yeah, you're right, because the moment you go synchronous, it's like still like near real time, right? So it's possible in platform event. The thing is, Chris, right? And I've seen this in a project where Salesforce might take time to process that request internally in Salesforce, right? So, if, for example, is that pod it has other resources they need to give it to somebody else, that platform event might be processed after some time, right? Because there's no guaranteed SLA on platform event is because it's synchronous.
Exactly.
But I'm not sure about the going queuable, whether that also have any, can take forever.
I have the feeling that queuable has a better reliability, because you won't lose a message, even if in platform event it's like, as you said earlier, it's like 4.9, it's 99.999, something like this. But at least in queuable you will never lose, because you have control. You are in Apex, you have control. The only thing that you have to be careful about is the limit, because I think it's like I forgot what's the limit for queuable. I think it's something like 50. You can unqueue 50 jobs, but it's in one transaction, right? And overall during the day, you can during the hour, it's 250,000. But this one you have the same for platform event. So I would say the limit you have on top is this 50, and I think it's for one transaction. So normally, if you do things correctly, you don't hit this limit. So I think I would use it if I need a little better reliability. Let's say the judge are starting to challenge me on the reliability on platform event and the complexity of doing reconciliation, blah, blah, blah. Then maybe I propose a queuable callout.
Correct, yeah.
One another option you have, you can check for the, with the new feature, I think you mentioned that, but you can check for the delivered platform event IDs. So you can have a report on the events that have been delivered, that have been failed so far. So not failed, but not delivered. Therefore, you can check which platform events have not been delivered yet. And if you need to retry it faster, you can create a logic around that to retry information.
Cesare, I'm confused about this feature, because when, I don't know if you were here when I commented on this earlier, I don't have much field experience on that, so correct me if I'm wrong, but when I look up this, you will find a couple of things. You will find the fact that, yes, you can have an event saying that if the publish operation has succeeded, but it will explain that it does not confirm for the asynchronous publish, and the feature is beta. So
it's a beta feature, then okay, forget it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd be happy if you take a quick look, Cesare, according to your knowledge, take a look. I will send you a link, tell me what you think. But I have the feeling that, okay, concretely speaking, it will raise your quality, because if you have an error, you will maybe get it, but maybe you don't get 100%. And once the feature is not beta anymore, there we can really have a reliability, but still, what is still confusing is that if we say that publishing an event has a 0.0001 chance of being lost, then if you tell me that I have a status event that is fired also, I will tell you, yeah, but this event is also subject to the 0.00. You see what I mean? So it's a little bit like the snake eating his own tail. So hopefully this feature is beta, so I will not mention it.
Yeah.
Once it's not, I guess I will have to do some tests to see how to talk about it.
Yeah, I think it's like a very rare chance, right? It's very, as I said, Chris, numbers are very low. It's very possible judges might not even know this this failure part, right? Because it's very, very rare.
Well, I'm pretty sure, I mean, except if you have a judge who is a guru in integration, for sure he will not know, except if that's written in the key. And that's the point, right?
Yeah,
So,
they might give you hints and some other
yeah.
to change the solution if you have to.
Yeah.
All right. So we talk 2-minute drill. We talk about this part. Yeah. So one other thing is, is in your report, as you go through, just show some knowledge, right? As I said, ESP, ETL, also like when you're picking platform event versus outbound. So I didn't talk about all of them, but I just quickly said I'm using platform event for a few reasons. So it's good if you can, because one of the things, if you look at the study guide, was you have to justify, right? So on platform event, you can always say based on the transactions, you might need to buy add-on licenses, like few things. So pick few things that you want to talk about, and also for the request reply, I use external services. Also, it's good to highlight, for example, that it's based on OpenAPI version 2. If you look at the summer releases, they actually I could not put it here. They're doing some few pretty good enhancements. For example, earlier I think they had like a 10,000 character limit. Now it's like very high numbers, and I think by the time you go to review, summer is already here, right? So they're doing like 2 or 3 big changes on external services, and it's good if you can say in summer. Actually, earlier there were like limitations. One thing was you can do this Apex test classes. I forgot the exact name. So there are a few things that they're doing in the summer release. So look at the release notes on external services. It's good if you can say, these new features are there. So the judges know that you're on top of these things, right? So just pick and choose where exactly you want to highlight a few things. Platform events, most likely most of you will use. So talk about the replays, the add-on licenses. Also, external services is good to have few keywords that will show that you're just not proposing the technology, but underneath how it's happening, and then it shows your knowledge, right? So just it's up to you how you're going to do that. Next
quick question on a keyword I see on this slide, Waruna, thank you. Enhanced external services. Can we invoke it through Apex?
No, through Apex directly? No. I think roadmap.
Okay, the reason why I'm saying that is I thought not, but I know it's low code, meaning it generates some stub. And last Friday, when Lilith did her mock, she pointed that, quite explicitly. She said something like, all right, it's not only through Flow, it's through Apex. And I think I found a reference on internet, but I'm a bit confused. Do you know for sure?
In summer release, one thing they did was the Apex classes, they let you access that because you can now give test classes, right? Which came in summer. But I saw the video before that in the release note. It said it's on the roadmap to expose those classes where you can call through Apex directly, but it was not targeted for summer. So I don't know whether I can check when exactly it was released or whether it's still planned.
Okay.
It was on the roadmap for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. But I know now you can add test classes on those Apex classes as part of summer release. Yeah. All right. Next thing is this is like I think we like a lot of I don't think you have to know all the details. Is that you just have to know that under REST class there's a composite APIs, which can handle similar to SOAP, which can do 200 records. Now with composite APIs, you can do multiple records updates as well. Main thing is just be aware of the before you go to SOAP for multiple records, you can still remain in REST and then use composite APIs to use multiple record updates. Right, that's the key of this. So
did you get grilled somehow on the composite? I had all right. When you have ESB calling Salesforce to do something, let's say you have a remote call in or something like that. What I usually do by default is I put REST. I mean, I put REST because usually I don't see a reason of using SOAP. So I will always put REST, and the question can be, okay, can I do multiple operations in one call? And then you can say composite. But then in composite, you have at least 4 or 5 APIs. Yeah, this is the one you put here. Yeah, SObject3, collection, bulk. You have composite, and you have the graph.
yes,
And they are quite interesting. For instance, the graph tells you that you can send 500 records. It's quite interesting. I think it was maybe GA recently. But yeah, the composite I think is quite strategic for that.
Correct. Yeah. I don't know about I need to read a bit of the graph, but I know this is also very powerful. But as you said, it's good to be aware of if they ask follow-up questions, are you sure I can do multiple records? Then most likely they must be pointing you towards the composite. Okay. So other thing I want to highlight was on my integration slide. I early in the first attempt I did like a table, but in my second attempt I started to draw. So these are the columns that I used: integration name, the direction. This direction and sync I got it from Tamim's book. In Tamim's book, he has the security column as well. I didn't include that because I didn't have security retake, but I focused on the direction, and along the direction I said sync, and the pattern which is on the study guide. The technology is what they talk about, the capability, right? So maybe you reword it so when they're judging, they know exactly these two are in the study guide, so they definitely gonna look at that, right? So one thing I want to highlight was the color is not clear. This time what I said was when I send a transaction, I highlighted the key elements going out and coming back. For example, first you do a process invocation. So this is the order sending synchronously to ERP. So I use a platform event. Salesforce, I had a flow, auto launch, which create a platform event, and ESB was the subscriber. So here I put order. So I put a different color and you said order. And then ESB is gonna do to Salesforce another API call to get the order lines. Because in my first review board, I had a comment that said I've not mentioned the key elements going is part of the integration. And then after that, ESB is going to send another to ERP, another API is going to include the order and order lines. And after that, its process is going to do another remote calling with the ERP order number and the status, right? So the status might be a default value, but in Salesforce, you're going to get these numbers back. So I think it's important, at least not all, you highlight the key things, elements, which are part of the integration, right? It's again my feedback based on that. I did the changes, but I just want to highlight that I did these changes in this attempt. Again, as I said, in Timing Books has a very nice slide along with security, which I didn't include. But I thought with this, I had very less questions, and also on my based on one of my first experience. Also, when you come across integrations, that might be in the Q&A that you find, okay, there's an integration that you missed. It's good if you go to this slide that you already drawn and talk about the integration as you do a regular call. one of the things I did mistake was in the Q&A, I tried, I didn't go to this table, so I rushed through it. So maybe I missed the pattern, I missed the technology, right? Which is probably the key areas they're gonna score on. So, you know, when they ask a question, okay, you missed it, that's fine. Now you're gonna talk about it. So go to this slide, you're gonna say, okay, integration name, this is the integration name, is gonna go from here to here, so it's gonna be synchronous. I'm proposing a request reply pattern because the user is waiting, and I'll be using platform event. You already might have something like that. So just look at it and then and read the integration, so that you have less chances of missing any of these things as you like answer a integration question and you realize you missed something, right? So I think it's one of the mistakes I did. So hopefully you will not do it. So if the integration question, a new one, go to the slide that you have the columns, talk one by one as you would already written something over there. That's all I had today. As I said, this is like I was still preparing slides, and I'll do it today, so it'll be helpful for guys who are going this week. Any questions on this?
Yes, Waruna, one question on your slide where you show different integration patterns. So we have a pub and sub pattern that is a little bit new for me, because usually when we publish a platform event, then it would be for me fire and forget and not publish subscribe.
Okay, yeah. So I never. You're right. I just got this from the Salesforce 602 workshop, which they did. You're right. I think maybe it's good to go with this pattern, which are here. You're right. Good point.
Another question to the pattern if and how you label it. So let's say we have, you know, because we're talking about the error handling, we use fire and forget pattern, but we receive response and acknowledgement from ESB on delivery of the platform event. So it would be a callback technically from ESB to Salesforce. Yep. It's not request and reply because we are not waiting for reply, but there is a reply and multiple replies. But still, you would call it remote process invocation, fire and forget, asynchronous.
Yeah, because you're using a platform event, that starting point is always fire and forget. Yeah, if you're getting updates subsequently, I would call as a remote call-in. That's only my opinion. I mean, I use that in my review board. I think it might be, I put both of these are remote call-ins because either, to get something back from, or even here, get the order, you might get the order number status. But if, for example, after that, they do updates in the order and they send updates back, again, they were all remote call-ins for me. So I went with remote calling for this one.
Okay, and you also, it's not integration per se, but you had the data retake for the uploads, and did you talk about it through in your, so when you have, for example, data load, subsequential, nightly batch jobs, you talk about how you create the records and get the ID back to link it to external services, or it was not part of your solution?
No, for the batch feeds that are coming in, I put them on the here as well. So I had batch data. Sorry, Cesar, can you repeat the question? Maybe I was not very clear.
No, the batch data update, it's clear, but if you have like subsequential nightly batch jobs, did you need to explain why ETL, why not ESB, when we switch to ETL comparing to ESB for this type of processing, etc., and which APIs you're going to use?
Yeah, so in the batch integrations, I said this. I just said bulk API, but I said why ESB, why ETL on the system landscape. So I even wrote it down on my landscape. I just on the right side, I just wrote why ESB, why ETL, but I didn't say again why ETL. But in the data migration, I did. In the data migration, because you have to use ETL, I said I'll be using ETL tool because it's a very high volume data.
Okay, thank you.
So I have another question, and well, it's a bit generic, and Melissa, I know we talked about it before. When we have an integration between two systems, Salesforce and another system, usually you will have the topic of the ID, right? So for instance, you have to create the order in the ERP. Maybe you want to do it asynchronous. Later on, ERP will call back. If you want this to work, either you use an external ID. In that case, the ERP should give the external ID right away, or you use a Salesforce ID and you assume that ERP will store Salesforce ID. What about the idea of managing ID, meaning that each time you do an exchange, you make sure that if you want to retrieve an external ID, you retrieve it, you put it in Salesforce, versus letting ESB manage a mapping between your systems? I don't know if it makes sense, Waruna.
Mapping between the Salesforce ID and the other ID.
Yeah, letting the ESB manage a mapping so that in Salesforce you don't care. For instance, when you send an order, you don't care about the external ID. You just send it, and ESB will maintain a table.
Okay. And that means ESP you have to do like a lookup to a table.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure because I know that in MuleSoft they had this object store, right? Where you can keep for, it's not meant to keep like permanent kind of data, which is like maybe you can keep for a few days, 3-4 days, but they recommend not to. So that's why they usually keep the lookup data, right? Like for example, if you're calling an external service on the say government website, when you get respond back, you're gonna do another lookup. So in the object store, they can keep it, but they recommend not to keep like long, like stale data. Because they want to avoid doing any lookup, so because it's going to impact the performance slightly, right? Rather than something on memory. So I personally would still ask Salesforce or the downstream to keep it, and not ERP, not the middleware to keep any. But it's a, I know that especially if you're doing a data migration, that's we always do that because they have the staging, and staging they always do look up on staging, right? But for real time, I'm not very sure it's the right solution. Because real time is supposed to like do everything in memory and then send it back, right?
Yeah.
This is my personal opinion. Yeah.
May I offer some thoughts?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's a valid consideration, and I've had it on a number of projects, client projects before, and the danger is that you're overloading your justification for using an ESB. An ESB's purpose is not for staging any data. It may cache it for a temporary period of time, but its purpose isn't for staging any data, for long periods of time, like Waruna said there. What you are starting to border into is using it for MDM purposes, for which there are dedicated technologies. So it's a dangerous sort of Pandora's box to open. Because MDM approaches are much more complex than this one use case, and have further reaching implications. So I don't think it's the right purpose for the ESB. If you want to use an MDM technology to do that, that's exactly what they're used for. Otherwise, choose one of the other systems either side of the integration.
I agree. I think ESB, if at all, for real-time traffic, should be. I mean, if it is stateless, it is less headache. As long as if you maintain stateless.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
For Waruna, one quick question for platform events. When you try to replay few of the failed events. Let's say you're subscribing, ESP is subscribing to.
The line's not very clear. Can you repeat that?
Is that clear now or
Yes.
not clear?
Huh?
Yeah. So what I was saying that for platform events, when you are trying to replay the events or when you are trying to implement something for error retries, usually you refer back to the platform. I think for each platform event they have a replay ID, and the way you replay it is that if for whatever reason the connection is out, like disconnected, and when things are brought up, in order for you to retrieve the further platform events that did not got delivered, you try to retrieve it from your last replay ID, anything bigger than the last replay ID.
No, there are 3 ways you can do it. One is if last number, it will give you whatever records that came afterwards. But there are 2 other options, right? One is you can if you give some, there's I think -1, it'll give everything which is there out there. Yeah, so there are 3. One is get everything out there. Other one is you with another number, it'll give everything new from that point onwards. Third one is if you give a number, it'll give everything which is after that number.
Yeah. So where do you exactly store that replay ID in this case?
Number? Yeah. So for example, on MuleSoft, you can specify, it's on the MuleSoft connector, you can specify that 0, 1. But then if you want to specify to send the specific message number, there's an option available as part of the connector.
I see. The latest number always gets stored in ESB, like in MuleSoft.
Yeah, the connector, the good connectors have other options. Yeah.
I see. So that makes sense. So eventually we are actually persisting that replay ID for this particular use case in ESB, although only like 3-day worth events can be retrieved. So it is kind of like temporary for that matter.
Yeah, still 2 hours, right? Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, again, good to know this replay options. We could have follow-up questions. I had memorized that for my retake. Now I got to cover. There are 3 options. Yeah. Any other questions on integrations? Yeah, what I want to highlight is make sure you are aware of the implicit integrations, which I thought there might be, again, if you guys see any other ways to find, please let me know. I can edit here. But when I went for the second attempt, this was my checkpoints to find integrations which were not there. So it's good to, as I said, it's good to, after you do your presentation or whatever, preparation, good to have this checkpoints so you can check in and make sure that you uncover integrations which you did not mention explicitly in the scenario.
So Waruna, one last question maybe on the integration. So if we have a requirement, right, let's say to sync our case updates. So let's say there is a requirement, we have Salesforce and an external system. And there is one line item which says that any updates to the service request, which represents case in Salesforce, that should be, I think synchronized is not the right word, explicitly they won't say, but those should be replicated, into the external system in real time, right? So real time is mentioned there. So now there are bulk changes, right? Because there are many people who will be probably dealing with cases like your service agents in Salesforce application. So my thought process on that would be that ideally we should go for CDC and so that ESB can subscribe and update the other external system. But does it really qualify under the real time stuff, or what could be the alternative otherwise?
Yeah.
So you could first say you just, though it says real time on the thing, you can always make a claim. I assume they occur in real time and propose a solution. On CDC, one thing you have to keep in mind is usually I've seen, though, for example, you want to send the case updates downstream, maybe the same system is gonna say it's possible like the same. I think it was in one of the scenarios. It said same system could come update Salesforce as well. So then you would have a recursion going on, right? So it's like they are updating Salesforce sending them, and then they're going to come back. So you have to stop that recursion somewhere. It's not off topic, but just keep that in mind. It's possible that there could be a inherent recursion mentioned, so you have to highlight that. But to the other question, you can always start to say, I'm assuming it's they're okay with near real time, and you can propose a solution. And if they don't like it, they can ask a follow-up questions.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, just on CDC, just be aware of the recursion that could happen.
Okay.
Again, it's only my opinion, but I think you have to make a judgment call. Any other questions on this topic? We're almost at time. So Vince, I'll upload this slide deck on Slack. Hopefully this session was useful, and then hopefully it'll help the guys who are going this week.
Great, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.